Hello, my name is Dr. Linda Gorman, and I'm a neuroscientist. Neuroscience, that's a really big word, but a neuroscientist is just a person who knows a lot about the brain. And I'm here today to talk to you about how you can make your brain healthy. It's really easy to do, and anyone can do it. I love talking about brain health because it's spectacular, and spectacular means great. And when your brain is spectacular, you're a happy and healthy person. This story is about cognitive health, which is the C in spectacular. Cognitive health is about thinking, and not just when you're in school. Cognitive is a big word that means being able to think. Your brain thinks all the time. That's something you do inside your head, and it's your brain's job to think. And by thinking, you're making your brain healthy. So let's see how we can make our brain healthy. There are lots of things to learn about the world, and we go to school so that we can learn what we need to learn to grow up and live a happy and healthy life. But did you know that going to school is not just about finding out how smart you are? Going to school is about learning about some information that you'll need to use all the time, like how to read and write. Going to school is also about learning how to think and use the information that you've learned, like how math can help you in the real world. Going to school is also about learning how to communicate with others so you can share your talents with others. This cognitive health story is called Why Can't I Remember? And it's about how you learn. We all know that everyone has a brain and that our brains are all different because everything that we do and think changes our brain. So our brain is changing all the time. Now, the one thing that's the same about our brains is that it's the job of our brain to keep us alive and living in a world that's always changing. To do this, our brain has to constantly learn, remember, and forget things. Yep, you heard me right. Forget things. Because remember, the world is always changing. So you have to forget things that you remember that have changed. Here's an example of how the world changes. Let's say that you lived in one place before and now you live in another place. Okay, you had to move. You're in a new house now. Now, most houses have a bathroom. And you would have known where the bathroom was in your first house, but now the bathroom is probably in a different place. We all have to go to the bathroom, so you need to forget where the bathroom was in your first house where you used to live, and we need to learn and remember where it is now in the place that you currently live. This is important because you don't want to get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom in the wrong place. So we all have brains that help us to learn and remember things, but the way that you learn and remember things may be different than the way your friends learn and remember things. One of the things that's important for you to think about and know is that all brains have to learn and all brains have to remember. Your brain needs for you to learn and remember things so you can stay alive. And your job is to help your brain to help you by figuring out the best way that you learn how to learn and remember. And you can do this by working with your teachers and trying out different ways to learn and remember. And if you can figure this out early, like when you're in elementary school, then your brain will be happy and your brain will be healthy. Usually, when you can't remember something, like how to spell a word on a spelling test, it's because you didn't learn it well enough. In order to show that you've learned something, you need to be able to remember it. The information you learn has to go into your brain and get stored so you can use it later. So learning and remembering go together. Now, there are lots of ways to learn something so that you can remember it. Let's think about this. I want you to raise your hand if you know what the letter B looks like. Okay, that's something that you learned and you all remember it. Is this what you thought it looked like? Okay, so your memory's fine. So why can you remember the letter B, but you can't remember how to spell a word on your spelling test? Well, the answer is because when you were learning about the letter B, you saw what it looked like. You practiced writing it and looking for it with other letters and words. You practiced what it sounded like when you said it, and you could hear it when others said it. You learn that the letter B looks different when it's lowercase or uppercase. So you really thought, even though you didn't know you were thinking, about what the letter B looked like. Plus, you were practicing and using the letter B all the time. You read it and you write it all the time. Using information that you've learned helps to strengthen the connections in your brain that store and help you retrieve or to get the information that you stored in your memory. So in order for you to remember how to spell the words on your spelling test, you need to figure out the best way for you to learn the spelling. Should you practice writing it like you practice writing the letter B? Should you practice saying it out loud or typing it on a computer or use blocks to spell it out? Or should you figure out a game that you can play with your friends so that you can learn how to spell? To be honest, there's lots of different ways for you to learn how to spell, and you need to figure out the best way for you to learn this skill. Practice and using the word will help your brain to learn and then remember the information. Plus, it makes learning fun, and we all know that that's good for your brain health too. Part of what you'll be learning as you figure out the best way for you to learn how to spell is how you like to learn. Learning, we know, is about thinking, which is great for your brain health. When you are thinking about information that you are learning, you are trying to understand it. And when you understand something, then you no longer need to memorize it. It makes sense to you and you just know it. Notice I keep using the word you. Well, that's because there's different ways to think. The way that you think about something may be totally different from the way that your friends think about something. What makes sense to you might not make sense to them. And there are lots of different ways to think about the same thing. And that's great. That way we can all come up with new and different ideas and ways to do things. Okay, so now let's think about math. What is math? It's learning how to use numbers. Okay, most of the time you say math and people are like, ew, why do I have to learn math? Well, there are lots of ways you can use numbers, not just in a classroom. You can use numbers to figure out how much money you need to buy something you want, like a new toy, or how many points you need to score in a game to win, or how much gas you need to get to a place that you want to go to, or how to fit a piece of furniture through a door in order to put it in a room, or my favorite, how many slices to cut your pizza so you get really big pieces. It's all math. Instead of just memorizing formulas to use, trying to make sense of why we're learning how to use numbers will make it easy. You can also work with others, which also makes learning math more fun. Another thing to understand is that the way you think about and learn how to spell and write may be totally different than the way you think about and try to learn math. There are lots of different ways to learn different topics. And what you need to do is you need to use your multiple sensory systems to make learning the topics fun. So you need to use your five senses plus your vestibular system, which is your sense of balance, and your proprioception, which is how you feel your muscles. You need to use that to make learning the different topics more fun. Let me explain. Let's say you use your vestibular system to balance. Well, you're saying your multiplication tables. Or you can play a game to learn about other people's perspectives, how they feel about things. Or you can watch a YouTube video to learn why different animals live in different places. Or you can read a book to learn how to take care of your brain. Or you can sing a song to help you learn about different explorers. You need to continue to try to figure out how you can learn different topics in the best possible way. Plus, you know that as your brain continues to grow and develop, you're going to be thinking about things differently, and you may need to change the way you learn things. The world, we know it's constantly changing, so you have to be constantly changing too. But why not use your sensory systems and make learning more fun? Now, to be honest, sometimes you're going to have to learn things in school that are really hard to understand, and you feel like your brain is just working way too hard. And sometimes you're going to be learning something that you're just not interested in, and you feel like your brain is bored. You find yourself asking, why do I have to learn this stuff? You feel like you're never going to have to use it, so why learn it? Well, the answer is most of the time, these topics that you're learning about are not just about learning the information, but you're learning how to think. As a student, your job is to expose your brain to as many things as possible when your brain is developing. Yep, there are going to be some topics that you're not going to think are fun to learn, and trying to understand this material may be really hard, but in trying, you're thinking. And the thinking that you're doing is helping your brain. It's also possible that it's preparing your brain for things you will learn later on, like when you're in college or when you go to work. The topics that you're learning that are hard or not interesting may be getting your brain ready to live in the real world. Another thing that you might find is that a topic you thought was not fun or interesting leads you to topics that you do find fun and interesting. You may love video games and you want to design them when you get older. It sounds like something fun and exciting to you. You start to look into the history behind how computers and video game platforms were built and how they've changed over time. This makes you think of ways that you can change video games in the future. So even though you really don't know why you have to learn names and dates of people in history or what they did or why it's important, you find that being able to make a timeline of computer and video games helps you to think of a new and better idea for video games in the future. So, understanding how history can play a role in new technology in the future, that makes having to learn history almost worth it. Another thing that we know is that when you memorize information and you do this without thinking about it or trying to understand it, then you're really not learning the information. You're also not helping your developing brain to grow. Your job right now is to go to school and help your brain to develop and stay happy and healthy. You're going to be in school for a long time, so help your brain to help you. Make sure that you're thinking and make sure that you're learning. Then you won't have to memorize things. Think about how you can best learn and try to have fun when you're doing it. If you want to remember, then use what you learn. Being able to remember what you learn is all about using the information you're learning. When you use something over and over again, then it becomes a habit and you no longer have to think about it as much. You learned how to walk when you were a toddler. You walk all the time. You never have to think about what your body's doing when you're walking. The same thing goes for learning information in school. If you practice or use the information a lot, like the letters of the alphabet, then you don't forget that information. So when you're trying to learn information for school, it's better to keep practicing it instead of trying to cram it in and memorize it the night before you have an exam. If you give yourself time to think about the information, then it will make sense to you. This is why you're usually given homework to do. It helps you to think about the information that you learned during the day. The more you think about and use the information you learn, the stronger the connections get in your brain that help you to store that information. Also remember that a lot of the storing of the information and strengthening the connections in your brain happens when you're sleeping. Yep, you heard me right. You actually do a lot of storing of your memories when you're asleep. I want you to remember this when you're thinking about pulling all-nighters to study in high school or college. It's always better to get a good night's sleep after preparing for exams. So when someone tells you that it's time for bed, they're actually trying to help you remember all the things that you learned during the day because getting sleep helps you to remember. Learning information and then having to take an exam may seem like it's just work for you, and a lot of students get stressed out about the homework, the exams, and the projects. What I want you to do is you need to think about homework, exams, and projects as fun things to do. What this what those homework exams and projects are doing is they're giving you the opportunity to see if you are actually learning the material. And the way that you're trying to learn the material, you're trying to see if that's working. And if it's not, then you need to try other things so that you can understand the material. Homework, exams, and projects are your way of communicating what you've learned and understand about the materials you've been working on. Remember, going to school, that's your job. Learning, that's your job. And when you go to school, you're trying to learn the best way that you can learn things. And that's what homeworks, exams, and projects will let you know. Are you learning it the best way for you? And you'll know you are if you do a good job or if you're having fun doing it. So school helps you learn how you learn. It's about figuring out how you can learn how to do things so that you understand and you can store the information. And when you think about things, you're going to be learning those things. And if something's not working, there are lots of other ways for you to try. You can try to read about some of your subjects, or you may want to listen to others, or you may want to watch videos to make the information that you're learning about make sense, or you can figure out games that you can play to help you learn. You have lots of senses. You need to use them so that you can have fun learning. And also remember, you're not alone. You can and you should ask for help from your teachers, your friends, your family. And also remember, this is not about how smart you are. Everyone has talents, and you need to find what your talents are and then use your talents to help you learn. Because our brains develop at different times, something that's hard for you to learn today may be easier for you to learn tomorrow. We know that the world we live in is always changing, and you're always going to be learning and remembering things. So developing good learning and remembering habits is good for you and for your brain health. So keep trying to figure out those different ways to learn and practice what you learn so that you can understand what you're learning. And remember to get enough sleep because before you know it, you'll be finding remembering is a lot easier. So thank you for letting me talk to you today about why you can't remember things sometimes. I've enjoyed spending time with you talking about your brain, and I hope that you've had some fun and learned something about your brain. Remember, being able to remember means you have to take the time to think and understand the information that you're learning. When things make sense to you, then it's easier to remember them. And practicing or using the information also helps you to remember. And there's so many different ways to learn. You just need to take the time and figure out what works best for you. Doing this now will help you and your brain stay healthy throughout your entire life. And we all know that a healthy brain is spectacular. Thank you so much for all your help. And remember, brain health, not just spectacular, it's fun too. As always, we want to thank the people at Johns Hopkins University, especially Dr. Ron Daniels, for helping us to help you understand why you can't remember sometimes. And we want you to understand that learning is something that you're going to be doing your entire life. And what you need to do is find out what the best way for you to learn is. And remember that different people learn different ways, and different people have their brains develop at different times. So just be nice to yourself and figure out the way that you can learn and have fun while you're doing it.